3 statistical secrets that you need to know heading into the Hungary Grand Prix. Welcome to the Pit Wall, your stop for fantasy Formula One content. You can like and subscribe for more content like this. I'm Jay Jack, and let's go. This video was recorded immediately after free practice 1. I have to hit the road. I got a 12-hour drive, got to make it down to my sister's wedding for this weekend. But here is my initial reaction to free practice 2, which finished right as I was finishing editing this video. Ocon does have good race pace. The Aston Martins and the Alpines seem to have better race pace than Ferrari, but recognize free practice 2 is often for race pace. Free practice 1 and especially free practice 3 are for qualifying. And as you're going to find out in this video, qualifying is going to make the biggest difference for this track. So keep that in mind, and on to the video. First statistical secret that you need to know, team lineup. Be aware that there are 2 halves to a fantasy Formula One season. First half is from rounds 1 through 12, and the second half is from rounds 13 to 23. In both of these halves, you get 1 wild card and 1 mega driver. And in the second half, you get 1 wild card and 1 mega driver. They do not roll over to the other. Since this is round 12 at Hungary, this is the last time that you can use a wild card or a mega driver before the summer break and before the reset of getting a new wild card and a new mega driver available to your teams. So if you haven't used your wild card yet, use it. If you have not used your mega driver yet, use it. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. Now you might be asking, what is the importance of wildcard? What's the importance of a mega driver? I put a link in the description below that you can find how-to videos, both for how to mega drive your fantasy Formula One team and how to wildcard your fantasy Formula One team, and that should be able to answer your questions. The second statistical secret is the track. The Hungaroring has been nicknamed Monaco without walls. High downforce, low speed corners, and not a lot of passing. So you want to pay attention to who qualifies high and who's able to manage their tires, because that is how they're going to be able to maintain their positions or use pit stop strategies to overcut or undercut other drivers so that they can gain their positions. So we're going to focus on 2 matchups as it pertains to the Hungaroring. The first is McLaren versus Ferrari. In free practice 1, both Ferraris have outperformed both McLarens. Even Seidel, the team boss for McLaren, said that this track does not suit the McLarens. It is one of their weakest ones on the calendar. So keep that in mind if you are trying to use McLaren versus Ferrari drivers, or even, as we will see later in this PITWALL Picks section, why you might want to consider picking up Ferrari as a constructor. The second matchup for the Hungaroring is Hamilton versus Verstappen. Hamilton is eligible for plus 10 points race streak bonus. And so you have to decide, do you want Hamilton or do you want Verstappen? The problem is that Hamilton costs significantly more than Verstappen. In a conversation between Nico Rosberg, who has an amazing YouTube channel, and his previous race team boss, Toto Wolff, Wolff hinted to Rosberg this interesting statistic. Last year in 2020, Hamilton had a 1-second race pace advantage over Verstappen at Silverstone. This year, that was cut down to 0.3. And as Toto Wolff pointed out, is that the advantage that Mercedes had over Red Bull carried over into the Hungaroring, where Red Bull, with a higher downforce track, was able to gain an edge. So because there is a 0.7 second loss between last season to this season, Wolff expects Verstappen to be stronger and faster than Hamilton at this track, because it suits the Red Bulls over the Mercedes. But keep this in mind that Hamilton has a record equaling 8 wins at this track. That means that Hamilton has been very proficient racing at Hungaroring and often takes victory. And Hamilton might be able to surprise us all and out-qualify Verstappen or out-race Verstappen this week. And so if you're on the fence about Hamilton potentially being a better choice than Verstappen, wait till we get to our PITWALL picks and I can show you how you can make a team composition between a Verstappen lineup and a Hamilton lineup. This now brings us to our third statistical secret for the drivers. Going into this race weekend, there's going to be a debate on whether you want to turbo Leclerc or turbo Norris. This kind of goes back into what our discussion was about Ferrari versus McLaren at this track. At Monaco, Leclerc was so quick. Ferrari was a better package at the low speed corners, high downforce track. Now, because of his problem and was not able to start the race, Leclerc got 0 points. But Norris surprised us by getting on the podium. Another thing to keep in mind is that Norris currently holds the record for most consecutive points finishes for a McLaren driver in history. Isn't that insane considering some of the other people who've raced for that team? Consistency of Norris is why it's going to be hard to switch off of him and go with Leclerc for turbo. Like I said, watch free practice 2, watch free practice 3. If Leclerc looks like he is going to be a better performance on this race than Norris, you would want to consider making him your turbo driver. My value pick for this race is Alonso. Two interesting statistics that you should know for this driver. First is that he has finished in the top 10 every season that he's raced at Hungary since 2010. He just finished his race streak, which means that you need to finish in the top 10 5 times in a row, which means that he has gotten very consistent as of late, and he could continue that run. A sleeper pick would be Vettel. You want to watch for how his performance is in free practice 2 and 3 because he performed quite well at Monaco, but it became apparent during the race when Aston Martin was able to do an overcut strategy at this high downforce track. Vettel has historically done quite well at this track. But considering the cost of Alonso and Vettel, is it worth to pick up either of these guys compared to Gasly? I put the link in the description below. I have a special Google spreadsheet that you can look at all these comparisons, but let's overview that question. Vettel and Alonso versus Gasly. Gasly sits at 143 points, whereas Alonso sits at 131 points, Vettel sits at 110 points. But notice that Vettel and Alonso are roughly the same price, and Gasly is a few million cheaper. That's the first thing going for Gasly. Let's now look at the average positions that they gain or lose over the race weekend. Gasly, his average qualifying position is 8th, while losing 2 positions over the course of the race, while Alonso and Vettel are both at 11th, which means that it doesn't seem like they are able to outperform Gasly over the course of the season. But this is why you have to say, what about their performances at Monaco, at tracks that are high downforce? And this now goes to our race scores. Race number 5. At Monaco, Gasly scored 22 points. But as you can see, over the last 3 races, he's got -5 points, 15, and 8. He has not done well over the last 3 races. Alonso, at Monaco, 10 points. And over the last 3 races, he has been steadily improving with 11 points, 17 points, and 35 points. That 35 points comes because he did really well in the sprint race, which boosted his score. And now down to Vettel. At Monaco, Vettel got 28 points, but he has been quite a decline over the last 3 races. He got 7, he got 4, and he got -1. It appears that the bigger question mark is between Alonso and Gasly. Here on the spreadsheet on the left under score, we see the race average. Gasly scores an average of 14 points, Vettel 11, and Alonso 13. So all 3 of them are right next to each other. But I have a new column that's called 3 race average. How have they been performing in the last 3 races? And as you can see, Gasly, who's been averaging 14 points this season, has only been getting 6 points in the last 3 races. Vettel 11, 3. The guy who's been performing well is 13 and now 21. But you have to remember, not only did he do really well in his sprint quali, he also got his plus 10 points for his race streak. And so Alonso might come back into similar scoring as these 3, but maybe the strongest option of these 3 drivers that you are potentially looking for. This now brings us to my picks. Before we get to my lineup, I want to share with you another cool thing from our spreadsheet called Price Point. Many of you have been commenting on YouTube videos or on Reddit about your team lineup. Here's an individual who is starting for the very first time this week, which means that his salary cap is 100 million. There are 2 options, like I said earlier, that you can go. You can go with a Hamilton lineup or a Verstappen lineup. On the top, you see that Hamilton and Bottas, Norris and Ferrari can all be on your team. Of course, you'll have to then pad that out with Mick Schumacher and Mazepin. Whereas if you go with Verstappen, you can get Verstappen, Leclerc, and Norris, which would get you the option to turbo either Leclerc or Norris. You still have to have Mick Schumacher, but then you can pick up another driver like Raikkonen, and then the powerhouse of Red Bull. Now, Ferrari did outperform Red Bull last race as a constructor, but that was because Verstappen's DNF. Normally, Red Bull has been outperforming Ferrari on a very consistent basis, and this is why you see all the yellow. Yellow shows where one team is better than the other team in composition, and Team 2 with the Verstappen lineup has 10 different categories that it's outperforming Team 1's composition, but perhaps the most important is to look at the average. Team 2's average is 165 points, whereas Team 1's average is 140. But over the last 3 races, Team 1 has been scoring 181 points per race versus Team 2, which is 173. Why we need to keep this in mind is because both Hamilton and Bottas are eligible for a race streak, which means that could be plus 20 points. That means you could break 200 points with these 5 drivers, especially since turbo has not been calculated into here. Here is my lineup. On Team 1, I tried to do minimal trading, maximum of 2 trades per week. Try to be steady. Team 2, I day trade with, and you can see the difference in those performances. Team 1 is 104.9 million, and Team 2 is 107 million. But notice the score is about 100 points between the two. Let me walk you through my day trading for this last week. I had Giovinazzi in Leclerc's position so that I could get a 0.1 million. Then I picked up Alonso so I could get another 0.1 million. And then I wanted a points pick of Leclerc. With my last free sub, I subs in Leclerc instead of Giovinazzi, and lo and behold, he also got a 0.1 million. So Leclerc was not just a money pick, but also a points pick. And this is the lineup that I will go with for Team 2. But trying to decide, do I want a Turbo Norris or Leclerc? I will pay attention as the free practices advance. Now for Team 2, here's the big decision. I could go with a wild card strategy. In this wild card, since I have not used it, what I could do is go with the Hamilton lineup. Pick up Hamilton, and I could pick up Bottas to potentially get plus 20 points. I go with Norris. Then as my constructor, I will go with Ferrari. It seems like the sentiment for Ferrari is dipping below, but that should not necessarily be the case because their percentage picked went up from 10% to 11. So I could see that starting to change as the weekend progresses. I go with Ferrari. And then my last 2 drivers, well, they got to be 16 million to make it work. So I'll go with Mick Schumacher, and then I have 10.2 million left. Well, of these 3, as you can see, Ocon is 56 points, Raikkonen is 81 points, and Tsunoda is 59. Well, this is why it's important to go to the Google spreadsheet. Looking at these 3 drivers, as you can see, Raikkonen, 8 points, averaging 9 points over the last 3 races. Tsunoda, 6, averaging 9. Ocon, 6, but averaging 1. Ocon has not done very well over the last 3 races. So with that, I will make the last guy Raikkonen. I have 0.9 million left over, but that would be fine. Now, for this to work, and me not to lose negative 20 points, I would have to activate the wild card. Well, it's the last race weekend, so I will use this wild card. And because I have the wild card, I have the freedom of changing up this lineup if I want to make last minute changes. And there you have it, our statistical deep dive as we prepare for the Hungary Grand Prix. Do keep in mind, this was recorded right after Free Practice 1, so watch Free Practice 2, watch Free Practice 3. You can join our race conversations at Twitter, at Relsick Racing. The link will be in the description below. You can watch those how-to videos playlists, which I will also put the link in the description below. And you can join the pit crew by liking and subscribing to this video. And until next time, I'll see you on the pit wall.